business outcomes don't actually depend directly on infrastructure, they depend on applications. But even with the best technology we have these days for virtualization and cloud, the timeline to deliver real applications into production for enterprises looks like this. We've got this agile and responsive virtual infrastructure now, where it takes very little time to stand up everything an application needs in terms of virtual infrastructure, but it still takes forever to get real applications into production and to keep them up to date. And the reason is that enterprises are still doing most of application management the same way they always did. It's often the same processes and tools that we use in the physical world, we're still using even on our fancy new cloud or virtualized infrastructure. To make the business happy, to actually get those business outcomes working, and to finally stop being the bottleneck for IT to stop being the bottleneck, these two things need to be just as good. We need our infrastructure to be fast and agile and responsive, and our applications to be fast and agile and responsive. People expected the world to look like this, and instead it still looks like that, and people are wondering why. So let's dig in a little bit into what a private cloud looks like, and why, even with the best technology that's on the shelf today from most vendors, we still see delivery timelines that look like that. So let's draw a quick little abstract private cloud. Lots of vendors are doing this type of thing. There's lots of choices. Typically we have racks and racks of compute gear with hypervisors on them running all sorts of different workloads. We have powerful virtual networking these days to match. It's not just a bunch of network gear plugged into the hypervisors. And we have piles of reusable storage serving lots of different tenants in the same data center. All that put together is a virtual data center. And of course, some of these clouds are truly global in scale, so we have more than one of these. We have lots of virtual data centers. And this is what the real infrastructure underneath a modern IT looks like. Now, of course, if you're a line of business user, you don't want to deal with all this complexity down here directly, and IT doesn't want the line of business user doing that either. So the best and most bleeding edge private cloud architectures are using self-service portals and service catalogs to organize what users can actually do on the cloud. So a line of business user doesn't have the ability to provision any VM or any LUN on the storage anywhere. The line of business user sees a catalog of the applications they're entitled to use, combined with chargeback and good financial information and monitoring and governance. Everything IT ever wanted to control what users are doing is being provided by the self-service portal, which is fantastic. And underneath this, we need some kind of orchestration layer, because standing up most services requires touching lots of pieces. It's not just standing up the application, it's turning something on in a monitoring system, it's closing a ticket, it's making a new entry in the CMDB. There's lots of things that have to happen when you stand up a service. And so there's an orchestration layer in a complete private cloud to take care of that. So far, this is great. All makes sense. This is great for solving the agile infrastructure problem. But here's where it starts to break down. This is where today's cloud vendors are leaving you hanging because they're not addressing the whole problem. This is this root of why it takes so long to deploy applications. Almost as an afterthought, private cloud infrastructures have an image library which contains a whole bunch of OVFs or VMDKs or Zen virtual machines, VHDs, all the template systems that we want to be able to deploy our virtual infrastructure. And the software is very good at taking these images and rapidly stamping them out as virtual machines. That part works great. And then, just like 10 years ago and just like 20 years ago, automation systems have a pile of scripts to automate anything you want. A script is the ultimate escape hatch for an automation system. It can do anything a script can do. And every single large private cloud infrastructure has some script library and the ability to run scripts on machines. And the standard private cloud story is that this is good enough to take care of your application problem. And what I want to talk about right now is why it isn't good enough. And this weak link in the private cloud stack is why application delivery is still taking so long. The first problem is that images and scripts are almost never the whole story. When we look at real enterprises that are doing this, at best, most companies are doing just the bare base OS as an image. They're not even baking middleware stacks, let alone entire applications into their images. And scripting up the rest of a complicated stack is a huge development project. So you still have an OS team pushing patches. You still have a middleware team installing databases and setting up schemas and all that stuff. You still have the poor application team, which is dealing with rapid fire change from upstream development and trying to push all this into production. So the manual effort is still there because images and scripts just fundamentally aren't powerful enough to deploy complex applications. But that's not the only problem. These images themselves are turning into a serious problem for people that are deploying large virtual clouds. Scripts work fine in a very precise situation, but as soon as anything changes, they don't work anymore. That's what we call a brittle engineering solution. Scripts are brittle, and changing them is a huge development project. Both images and scripts really stink for doing updates. If I need to get this system from version 1 to version 2, the image doesn't help me because I can't update a running system with a new version of an image, and the existing scripts don't help either. Somebody's going to have to write a new script just for that to try to get a system up to V2. So that is the problem. That is the missing link in today's private cloud stacks. They're fantastic for the infrastructure. We got that problem licked, but the old solutions of trying to use golden images and scripts to take care of your applications are just not cutting it.